Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. On this episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, we have Yolanda Seals-Coffield. She is PwC's U.S. Deputy Leader. And she's a principal who's been with the firm for over a decade. Before joining the U.S. leadership team, she was the firm's chief employment counsel and led a team of lawyers responsible for advising the firm's people team, the Office of Partner Affairs, and the Office of Diversity. In that role, Yolanda was a member of the firm's people leadership team and worked closely with business leaders and partners across many aspects of the people agenda. She also served as the president of PwC's Charitable Foundation, Inc. And as the deputy people leader today, Yolanda helps provide strategic leadership across initiatives to align the firm's people strategy and function with its growth strategy. She's committed to helping PwC continue to be a place where people can be themselves, grow their careers, and thrive in and out of work. We are simply delighted to have Yolanda join the podcast today. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. We are in season 9, and I am ever so delighted to welcome this week's guest. I've known Yolanda Seals-Coffield for a number of years. I'm not even sure when we met, Yolanda, but anyway, I am super excited to welcome you to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Simone. I know it's probably been more years than either of us wants to admit. So we'll just say it's been a long time.
That's right. Yeah, awesome. Well, we're delighted to hear more about your career journey. And so, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
You know, I think in the very early years, and this is an interesting irony, I remember being in high school and someone saying, "What do you want to be?" And I was like, I think I want to be an accountant because I'm really good at math. The funny thing is I had a teacher at that moment who said, there is absolutely no way you're going to be an accountant. I see you as a lawyer. And sure enough, I went on to undergrad and went to law school. So the irony that I now work for an accounting firm is pretty funny to me. And I am terrible at math and all sorts of things. So I probably would not have been a great accountant. But I figured out pretty early on that I wanted to be a lawyer.
That's awesome. So once you figured that out and you listen to your teacher, our teachers are so impactful, aren't they? You listen to your teacher. What was it like for you lining up the steps to bring that to reality?
Yeah, so I went straight from undergrad to law school. And by the time I entered undergrad, I was pretty focused on what I wanted to do. I was like a political science major, which so many lawyers are. I was a communications minor because I thought I'd be this great courtroom orator one day. That part did not happen, but I was like preparing for it. And then I went straight to law school. I clerked for a year with a federal judge in Boston because, again, I thought I'd spend most of my life in a courtroom, and then went on to join a law firm back in Connecticut where I grew up. And so, like many lawyers, I started my career in a big law firm, which is an incredible place to be trained. I feel like lawyers learn to become lawyers by working. It is very much an apprenticeship model, and it is how we learn and how we grow. And I like to think that you learn to think as a lawyer in law school, you learn to become a lawyer when you start working. And that absolutely is what happened for me as I entered a big law firm. And then my career sort of went on different turns from there.
Well, you are very successful in your career today. So as you look back on your career journey, what would you say, what's a pivotal moment for you? This show is about being in the driver's seat, which means don't take your hand off your career. So can you think of that pivotal moment where you were all hands on and just accelerated and just entering the driver's seat?
You know, I oftentimes think back, and I've been asked this question before, and For me, it comes back to an important piece of advice that I received very early in my career. I was probably a first or second year associate, so very early in my career. And a more seasoned lawyer gave me the piece of advice that I still use to this day, that I try to impart to my children, which is there are going to be opportunities that come your way, and you won't know where they're coming from. You won't always know why you're getting the opportunity. Your job is to be ready for the moment. And that is how I've tried to live my entire career. So I started my career in a law firm. I then joined a corporation, which is where I met you. I went to work with a company in Connecticut. And even in my time there, I went in as an employment lawyer, but over the course of my career, I took on different things. I started to work with supply chain. I started to work in different areas because people asked me to do it. And I sort of was always guided by being ready for the moment. And when the moment came, I did it. I joined PwC about 11 years ago as the chief employment lawyer. So very much in the employment law career that I enjoyed for the first 25 years of working, but over time started to engage in other areas as well. So I went on to work with our PwC Charitable Foundation, and then was asked to take over as president of that foundation a few years ago. And that wasn't an opportunity I was looking for. It was a moment that came, and I took it on and got really excited and engaged about it. And then a year ago, I was asked to move over to join our human capital team. And as an employment lawyer, I've worked with human capital professionals for many years, have always been passionate about developing people. And so took it as a great opportunity to go off and do something else. And so I've tried to be guided by looking for those moments and being okay with being uncomfortable, being okay with being a little afraid of failure, being okay with being out of my depth for a period of time. There are huge learning curves when we take on new roles, and I've learned to embrace that and embrace the uncertainty of that. And it served me well. And I've taken on these opportunities that have been given to me, and I've been blessed to have them. The other thing I'll say, Simone, is I've tried to be guided by what is fundamentally important to me. I have always been passionate about developing people. I've always been passionate about cultivating environments and ecosystems that really enable a diverse group of people to thrive, and finding ways for us to be of service in our communities, especially in the communities that serve us so well. So when I look back over my career journey, it has always been about people. It has always been about development. It has always been about cultivating environments for diverse people to thrive. And that has absolutely guided the different decisions that I've making at different points in time.
Lots of gems there, Yolanda. And so I've started to take notes, because what came up for me was the stay ready. Stay ready. And I wonder if you can give our audience any tips on saying yes, because opportunities come, and oftentimes we talk ourselves out of opportunities, why it can go wrong, and then end up saying no. And I love what you say about dancing with discomfort, embracing the discomfort of the unknown. But how, that's a skill that's developed over time. Looking back, is there any tips that you can share with the audience on how to be more comfortable with saying yes?
Yeah, and that's the hardest part, right? It is so easy for us to talk ourselves out of opportunities. We want everything to line up perfectly. We want guaranteed success. At some point, I made a decision, and I can't honestly tell you when that inflection point happened for me, but at some point, I made a decision that if an opportunity didn't scare me a little bit, it wasn't the right opportunity for me. So if I'm not a little afraid that I might fail, then it's not an opportunity for me, because I don't think that there'll be enough growth for me to take on the new opportunity. And trying to be really selective with our time. I mean, you and I have talked, we've bonded as mothers, we have families, we spend a considerable amount of our time working every day. I want to do the things that I'm going to be passionate about, but I also want to make sure that I'm growing and learning. So I love my work on the people team because I love our people strategy. I love developing our people. But I also love that work because it was different enough that I thought, you know what, Yolanda, you may not be able to do this, but I need you to step out and do it. So I've tried to be guided by that. And I don't know when it started, but I have tried to be guided. I've tried to share that philosophy with others, because to me, it is about staying ready. But staying ready means being an expert in what you're doing as well, right? You have to be indispensable at what you're currently doing in order for people to see you and think about other opportunities for you. You also have to be courageous enough to raise your hand and say, I want a new opportunity. And I'll tell you, I've done that at times and I haven't gotten that opportunity. I've raised my hand and said, I want to be considered for this role. And I've had leaders come back to me and say, you know what, not that one, but this one. And some of those conversations have led me to the most interesting changes and pivots that I've made in my career. So being an expert at what you do so that people come to rely on you, and being courageous enough to raise your hand and say, I want to be considered for something different.
Mm. Would you build on that? And let's segue to the formula for owning your career. What are the key ingredients to be successful in your career? Can you build on what you just said? Is there anything else that we need to set ourselves up for success when we think about how to successfully own our careers?
I will go back to what I just said because I can't say it enough. I've had so many conversations with mentees and with people who have asked for career advice, and they're really excited to do something different and they're very passionate, but maybe not about the thing that they're doing in that moment. I will say to anyone, do your current job well. You have to be killing it in what you do every day to have an opportunity to do something different. And you can't underestimate that because it's really easy, right? To say like, well, I want to go over here. So I'm going to start putting my energy to what over here looks like and start to slip up on the stuff that you've committed to deliver in your day job. So the first thing you have to do is become an expert at what you do and do it well. The second thing is then to be open, like look for those opportunities, talk to people. I had plenty of conversations with people in human capital years before I moved into this role to say, gosh, tell me a little bit more about what you do every day. Like I'm really passionate about these aspects of human capital. Tell me about these other aspects that I don't know. So that kind of intellectual curiosity, I think, is so valuable in terms of saying, there are things out there that I don't know about and I want to understand them better. And the best way to do that is to go out and engage and have conversations with people. And then being courageous enough to raise your hand. And Simone, I have to tell you, that is about the hardest thing to do, right? We are wired to have a fear of rejection. We don't want someone to say no to us. We don't want someone to tell us we're not good enough. We don't want anyone to kind of feed these kind of voices and insecurities that live within all of us. Pushing through that discomfort and leaning into that discomfort and saying, you know what, all they can say is no. And if they say no, then I want to understand what I need to do to be ready. Like what steps can I take? How can I learn? How can I grow? How can I be driven by my intellectual curiosity to be ready for that opportunity when it comes up again? But at a minimum, they know you're interested and they know you're curious. So I think those steps, kind of being an expert at what you do, asking people and being intellectually curious about what may be of interest to you, and then being courageous enough to put yourself out there and ask for opportunities sets you up to take ownership of your career. And it's never too early to start to do that.
Love all of that. Yeah, the no, the rejection. Yeah. I once had someone say to me, no means next opportunity. But yeah, we get really afraid of the no's. I wonder, you're at a very senior level in your career. What advice would you say our audience should consider when thinking about seeking out a sponsor? I know you talked about doing those informational interviews, but talk about being afraid of hierarchy and connecting with someone in a senior level to, I want an informational interview, but at some point I want you to help me move up in my career. What's something that's memorable, or any tips that you can share with the audience around that?
Yeah, so many of us live in a world where we thrive in relationships. Certainly what I've done for a career has always been very relationships driven. What we do as a firm is very relationships driven. At the heart of those relationships has to be a level of authenticity. And so I think it is hard to be courageous and reach out there and ask someone to take an interest in your career. And I think when you do it, you have to be really thoughtful about when and where and how you do it. So I've always taken the approach that there are people out there who I'm going to help and who are going to be helpful to me. And what I mean by that is I don't want it to be a one-way street. I want to understand what they do, and I want to offer to be of help to them. How can I help you? What can I do to make your job easier? And in turn, I want to better understand what you do and get whatever career advice that you can share with me. I don't think about mentorship or sponsorship as a single relationship. I often define what I call as like my circle of sisters or my board of directors, where there are people in different phases of my life that I've connected with, that I stay connected with. And there are people that I go to for career advice. There are people that I go to for learning advice. There are people that I go to for different things that I need along the way. So my job is to have authentic relationships with them and to stay connected to them. But I think about it more broadly. There is no one person who is going to help drive your career. There is this kind of board of directors. For my close friends, I call them kind of my circle of sisters, but there are these people that come into our lives that will have an impact. And your job is to stay connected to them and to form those relationships in as authentic of a way as possible.
If you had to define or create a title for your career body of work, what would it be? If we were writing a book about your career, what do you think you would
Oh
name
my
the title of
gosh,
the
I'd love to sit down and write a book one day.
book? Go for it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a tough one. I think I'd say what's next.
Mm,
I have been intellectually curious my whole life, and I hope that there is never a day that I am not curious about the world and curious about different opportunities and curious about finding ways to connect my personal passion, my personal mission with the work that needs to be done. If I'm driven by that, if I'm driven by sort of what I'm passionate about, what my values are, then I'm open for whatever. So I think my book would be called What's Next, and I'd be open for the next opportunity that came along that continued to help me advance the things that I am passionate about. And by the way, I should be really clear, when I say next opportunity, that doesn't mean a different role. Like so many of us have had tremendous opportunity in the job we were in. I spent 25 years as an employment lawyer. During that time, I ran a COVID-19 task force. I partnered with people on sort of solving COVID-19 for our firm. I ran a charitable foundation. I did plenty of different things, all within the same role of serving as the firm's chief employment lawyer. And I had opportunities to partner with and to co-lead things with a variety of leaders within our organization. And all of those things have been helpful in helping me learn and helping me grow. So a next opportunity doesn't have to be a different job. It's just about how do you find opportunities to continue to grow and learn in the space that you're in.
I love that. I love that. Really, being the driver. Was there I don't know, Yolanda, as we talk through this conversation, it seems like you've always been in the driver's seat, very planned, very thoughtful, methodical about step to step. Has there ever been a time in your career that you were out of the driver's seat and sort of felt like, man, I'm a passenger here?
Oh, I have no doubt there has been. Like, so, I am definitely your stereotypical firstborn kid. Some would call it bossy when I was younger. I like to think of it as like strong leadership potential. And I've been trying to reframe that, but I've always been that person to plan 10 steps ahead. But there were absolutely moments in my career where I looked up and I said, I actually don't know what's next. So for many years, as I said, I went straight from undergrad to law school. I had very defined majors. I did a clerkship, so I thought that's what I needed to do. I went into a big firm. And probably in my first role in a corporation, when I was sort of out of the firm and I started to see the world so much more broadly, it wasn't clear to me what was next. And I had to get comfortable with that. And that was not a really comfortable place for me to be, because I have been pretty meticulous about planning my life. Now, in many years since then, I've learned that plans really don't matter. You get older, you have children, you have families, life comes at you in so many different ways. You deal with personal crises within your families, within your homes, and you realize that your plans do not matter for any of that. So I have absolutely been disabused of the notion that I could plan and control my whole life. But I would say at that there was this moment where I left the law firm and I went in-house and I started to see the world very broadly, and it wasn't really clear to me what I was going to do next. And I just had to be open and follow my passion and see where it led me. But it was disconcerting initially, for sure.
Stick to it, stay with it, dance with the discomfort. Yeah, back to that. What would you say, what resources have helped you to level up in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm an extrovert, and so I get my energy from people. So I will tell you, there are plenty of people who will get energy from like reading every book that they can on what great leadership looks like, or what great human capital looks like, or what's next. And I enjoy a good podcast and I enjoy a good audiobook, but I get my energy from people. I am curious. So if I see someone doing something really interesting, I want to find a way to talk to them about what they're doing. I want to learn more about what they're doing. I want to understand what drives them and what their passions are. I want to understand how I can help them. And by the way, I'm also okay if like what I think is help, they actually don't find to be really helpful. I learned that lesson very well as a part of running the charitable foundation. There were organizations that we would come to and we would say, God, I have this vision of how your organization could like have scalable impact across like all these different, and those folks would say, we've got something really beautiful that works right here, and it is serving our community so well, and our results show it, and this is where we play, and this is how we scale. And I've come to, to really respect that. So because of my natural desire to talk to people and to learn from people, that's how I get energized. That's how I learn more. I'm always open to hearing what other people do so well, and learning from them. So that's largely where I get my energy.
So are you strategic in terms of defining, okay, this is what I want to know, and then you have a plan for these are the people, the influencers who I want to learn from, and that's how you'd recommend for those people who are similar minded, where they really gravitate towards people and learning from people. Anyone come up for you that has just wowed you on that journey?
Oh, there are so many people that wow me. There are so many leaders that I work with every day that I find incredibly inspirational and that wow me. And there are different moments in time when I am sort of most impressed. I will tell you, at our firm, we have done some tremendous work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have taken stands in the face of tremendous uncertainty. And so I will tell you, one of the things that if I look back over the past 5 or 6 years, where you see these kind of moments that matter, and you think like there is a leader that is there in that moment that matters. It's when I was sitting in a room with a bunch of our leaders led by our CEO, our chairman, and we started talking about CEO action for diversity and inclusion. And it didn't even have a name then, but we started talking about the concept of CEO action for diversity and inclusion. And we were coming off that really hot summer where there were, police killings going on. There was that individual who killed the police officers in Dallas. And it was this time of just racial unrest and turmoil in this country. And obviously there have been various peaks where that has happened, and there have been more since then, unfortunately. But there was just this moment where as a leadership team, we just paused. And our leaders said, what can we do? And one, we need to support our people, and we need to create a safe space for people to share and to have these hard conversations. But that's not enough. Like, what else can we do? What else can we do as a community of problem solvers? What can we do collectively with the community of other CEOs and other organizations and people who are passionate about this, and for people for whom their values are to go and to act and to serve. And I sat in these rooms and I watched these leaders think about these things and process these things, and CEO action was born. And what's so tremendous about that is there was this lawyer in me that thought, yeah, I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm not sure how corporations weigh in on these really painful issues. And to watch the leaders, and again, I think leaders are about who's the right leader in that moment. So to watch our leaders who were the right leaders for that moment say, we're going to push through all that discomfort. We're going to push through all that risk. We're going to take a stand, and we're going to do something meaningful that has an impact on the community. And it has flourished, and it has been tremendous. So there are plenty of leaders that I have seen in those moments that matter that I admire deeply. And it is about having the right leader and the right moment and sort of watching that magic unfold in front of you that is so inspirational to me.
That's beautiful. I do know about the CEO Action Committee, so that is wonderful to hear the vital role that PwC played in that. As we begin to wrap up the interview, are there any parting words, any career advice that we did not touch upon that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, we're in such an interesting time. With the pace of change has accelerated so much in this country. The pandemic has only made that more intense. And we've talked a lot about the great resignation, and we've watched people move and find different opportunities. And we've watched our kind of relationship with work shift in this way that is probably permanent. And we watch all of that and it feels heavy. So what I like to think about, and as I think about people who are starting their career or pivoting their career or growing in their career, the future is bright. There are just tremendous opportunities out there for people. And yes, our relationship with work has changed. And yes, what we need from work and balance in the rest of our lives is very different. And we're still battling through this pandemic, and we're still working to get ourselves back to a state of what feels like our new normal. But I think the opportunities are there. And so I'll go back to the advice that I received early on. The opportunities are there. You don't know where they're going to come from. Our job is to be ready for that moment. And I think if we embrace the uncertainty on that, we will go on some incredible journeys together in this thing called life and in this thing called work. So I think the future is bright, and we just need to be ready when the moments come.
Yolanda, I think your episode is going to be titled "Stay Ready." I love that, and it's been a theme throughout the entire episode. So I feel strongly about "Stay Ready," and I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to spend some time with you.
Awesome.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.